Okay, we're going to take a little bit of notes, and then what you're going to do is you're going to answer. There's a quiz online, like one of those light blue puzzle pieces where you drag and drop. So the answers to all of these questions are going to be found right here in your notes. A quadratic formula is something new we're going to learn today, and it finds the solutions to quadratic equations. The name, you guys know a quadratic in standard form, because that's what we've been talking about this whole time, is, I'm going to move my thing here. That's when you have an equation in the form y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So that's called standard form. And then we've been graphing these a long time, called parabola. So the name of the graph is called a parabola. So what we're going to learn is a new formula called the quadratic formula. And what it finds are the solutions. It finds the places where the parabola crosses the x-axis. The vertex, it does not find the vertex. Okay, we've learned about that in the past couple weeks. The quadratic formula finds where the parabola crosses the x-axis. And to learn the quadratic formula, I'm going to sing a song for you.
You can remember the quadratic formula to a song like Pop Goes the Weasel. Here we go. To solve for x equals, it all starts with negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a.
So the 4 steps that are going to help you solve this quadratic formula is the first thing you want to determine is what is your a, b, and c. Then you want to plug those numbers into the equation. I think it's important to solve the square root part first and then finish the entire problem. And I have, remember this plus or minus. We'll talk about how to do that as we solve this problem. So this is already in standard form. That's good. And it says equals 0. This will only work if it says equals 0. So remember, if it's just an x squared, it means 1x squared. So this is your a, your b, and your c. So a equals 1, b equals 3, c equals negative 4. Since it's minus 4, it's negative 4. So I honestly kind of think of that song in my head. It all starts with negative b. So negative b would be negative 3 plus or minus square root b squared. So we're still talking about the number 3. 3 squared is not 6. Remember, 3 squared means 3 times 3. That's 9. Okay, and then a lot of times what I do is this negative 4ac. I kind of do that all at one time. So this is like negative 4 times a times c. So what's negative 4 times a times c? I'll just kind of work it out right here. That'd be negative 4 times 1 times negative 4. So we have 2 negatives, so that's going to turn into positive 16 plus 16 all over 2a. 2 times 1 is 2. So we're going to do the square root part first. 9 plus 16 is 25. Negative 3 plus or minus square root of 25 all over 2. Okay, so we found a, b, and c. We plugged into the equation. We solved the square root part first, and now we're going to solve the entire problem. What is the square root of 25? That's 5. So negative 3 plus or minus 5 divided by 2. Okay, what this means is we're going to have 2 answers. You pretend it's a plus sign to solve one answer, negative 3 plus 5 divided by 2. And you also pretend it's a minus sign, negative 3 minus 5 divided by 2. Make sure you do the numerator first. Negative 3 plus 5 is 2 divided by 2, and that's 1. X equals 1. That's one of the answers. And then if we do negative 3 minus 5, that's negative 8 divided by 2, and that's x equals negative 4. So these are the 2 solutions to this equation. I'm going to show you what this looks like on Desmos. So I went to Desmos and I typed that equation into Desmos x squared plus 3x minus 4. And if we want to find where the parabola equals 0, that's why we click on the x-axis. And look, we got negative 4 and 1. But you want to write down your answers as x equals negative 4 and x equals 1. So now I'm going to go through and practice 3 more problems. I think it'd be a good idea if you tried these yourself as I'm doing these. So if you want to write these down, and I'm going to ask you in that Schoology quiz the answers to these, so you want to make sure you're paying attention and follow along. Okay, so A, B, B, and C. That's the first things you want to find. And so this is already in standard form. It says equals 0. So we have 2, -6, -5. That's your A, your B, and your C. So when we do the song, it all starts with -B. -6 turns into +6. So that's just something you need to know. -B would turn into +6, plus or minus square root. When you do B squared, -6 squared becomes +36. Remember 6 times 6, or -6 times -6 is 36. Okay, I'm going to write the formula down again in case you forgot. -B plus or minus square root B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. So 36 is B squared. Let's do -4 times A times C. So I'm going to show that work right here. -4 times A times C. Notice we have two negatives. That will become +40. So make sure you write +40 right here. And then all over 2A, 2 times 2 is 4. So we have 6 plus or minus the square root of 76 all over 4. Okay, we don't know the square root of 76, and if you don't have a calculator, that's fine. Desmos is a regular calculator too. If you go down here and you hit the square root button, 76, and you can see we're just going to round to one decimal. Let's just say 8.7. So the square root of 76 is 8.7. 6 plus or minus 8.7 divided by 4. So first, let's pretend it's a plus sign. We're going to do 6 plus 8.7 divided by 4 and 6 minus 8.7 divided by 4. So go ahead and just type that on a calculator. Make sure that you do 6 plus 8.7, hit enter, and then divide it by 4, or else it'll mess up your answer. So x equals let's just say 3.7. And then when we do 6 minus 8.7, hit enter, divided by 4, you get x equals -0.7. So we're just going to round our answers to the nearest tenth. Again, if you would type this on Desmos, this graph, you would see that's where they cross the x-axis. Okay, number 2 is kind of weird because you're going to notice there's not another number here, and that's okay. It means A equals 1 still, B equals 2, but C equals 0. There's not a number C right there, and you just say 0. So -B would be -2 plus or minus square root. B squared would be 4. Now let's think in our head, what's -4 times A times C? Since there's a 0, it's just going to be 0 all over 2 times A, 2. So -2 plus or minus square root of 4 minus 0 is just 4 divided by 2. You guys know the square root of 4 is 2. So we have -2 plus or minus 2 divided by 2. Lots of 2's there. Okay, let's get our plus sign answer and our minus sign answer. -2 plus 2 divided by 2. -2 minus 2 divided by 2. This would equal 0, right? 0 divided by 2 is 0. So x equals 0 is one of the answers. And then this would be -4 divided by 2, which is -2. So there's our two final answers. Finally, number 3, what's A equal B and C? -2, 1, and 3. It all starts with -B, -1, plus or minus square root. B squared, 1 squared, 1 times 1 is 1. Now, let's do -4 times A times C. And again, I like to kind of just do that up here, maybe somewhere. -4AC is -4 times A, -2 times C, 3. And that's going to be +24. All over 2A. Now, A is -2. 2 times -2 is -4. Can you guys see what the square root's going to be? It's going to be the square root of 25. You guys should know that's just 5. -1 plus or minus 5 divided by -4. We're going to do the plus minus. -1 plus 5 divided by -4. And -1 minus 5 divided by -4. Okay, the top here would be negative 1 plus 5 would be 4 divided by negative 4, and that is negative 1. Negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6 divided by negative 4. You can type that in a calculator if you want. That would be positive 1.5. So the last thing you're going to have to do on Desmos, don't worry, I know that those take a long time solving the quadratic formula. We're not going to solve any of these. All we're going to do is find A, B, and C. And you're going to have a matching section where you're going to match these equations with the A, B, and C. And save this. When you write this down, save it because it's going to help you on tomorrow's assignment. So I would write these down and save them in the correct order. Quadratic formula only works if it's in standard form and if it says equals 0. So what we want to do on number 1 is we want this 5x to hop the bridge in between the x squared and the 2. Remember, when it hops over, it becomes negative. So that 5x becomes negative 5x, but everything else stays the same. And now it says equals 0. That's our goal. We have it in standard form and equals 0. So our A is 1. Remember, it's 1x squared. B is negative 5, and C is 2. So on Schoology, you're going to have this equation, and you're going to have to match it with this A, B, and C. I'm going to do a couple more with you, and then I think it's going to get obvious. Number 2 is already in standard form. It already equals 0. So you guys should just be able to tell A, B, C. 5, 2, negative 1. Number 3 is not in standard form because these two are backwards. So we want to, but we're not really moving it across the equal sign. It's just we want to write this term first. So I'm going to write negative x squared first, positive 5x, positive 2 equals 0. Now it's in standard form, x squared x2. So our A is this first number, negative 1, B is 5, and C is 2. So number 4, you're going to want to move both of those over the bridge and make them negative. Number 5 maybe looks like it's in standard form, but it doesn't say equals 0. So all you have to do is minus 1 from each spot. So this will be 2x squared plus x plus 5 equals 0. So here's your A, B, C. Remember, it's a 1 if there's not a number there with it. So you're gonna match these with the correct A, B, and C. And they all involve a 1, a 5, and a 2 in some way, but you have to have them in the correct order.